The living room buzzed with quiet conversation as sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting warm patterns on the plush cream carpet. Laughter echoed from the dining room, where a group of close friends had gathered to celebrate little Emma's third birthday. Streamers in pastel pinks and purples hung from the chandelier, and a long table groaned under the weight of colorful treats. Cupcakes topped with swirls of buttercream, a towering three-tiered cake adorned with fondant flowers, and bowls of rainbow confetti candies. Emma's parents, Claire and Michael Reynolds, circulated among their guests, smiling brightly but carrying a subtle tension. Their roles as hosts were pristine, yet neither spoke of the undercurrent between them, the uncertainty about how their new nanny, Jasmine Turner, would fit into the equation. Jasmine stood quietly by the fireplace watching Emma chase after her cousins, her glossy black hair tied back neatly, her eyes soft with affection. She wore a simple lavender blouse and dark jeans. She looked every bit the reliable caretaker she was, yet during moments like this she felt acutely aware of how different she seemed to the mostly white circle of friends. Still, Emma's face lit up whenever Jasmine caught her eye, and that was the only validation she needed. A gentle breeze from the open French doors stirred Jasmine's hair as she watched Emma giggle when Aunt Lisa twirled her around. Across the room, Michael held a glass of champagne, offering it to a friend. He exchanged pleasantries with Kevin, a neighbor from down the street. Claire, in a soft floral dress, lingered behind them, watching Jasmine and Emma with a mixture of wonder and mild apprehension. They had spoken to Jasmine about boundaries, about roles, about being careful not to blur the line between nanny and mother. Yet every time Jasmine comforted Emma after she scraped her knee, or tucked her into bed at night when Claire came home late from the law firm, it had seemed to them that Emma saw something in Jasmine that they themselves couldn't provide in the morning rush. They assured each other that it was normal for a child to form such attachments, but neither wanted to face what might happen when other people noticed. Just then, Emma darted into the room, holding out a cupcake to Jasmine. In the middle of the swirl of guests and chatter, she looked straight at Jasmine and said, "Mommy, you have a cupcake too?" Her words came softly, but in the quiet hush that fell over the cluster of guests nearby, it sounded shockingly clear. Jasmine's hand froze midair. She looked at Emma, eyes wide, and quickly smiled, gently shaking her head. "No, sweetie. This is just for you today." Emma's lower lip trembled as she tried to understand why her cylindrical world tilted for a moment. She hugged Jasmine's legs, burying her face into her cotton blouse as if seeking reassurance. Claire rushed forward, forcing a laugh when she saw the guests' raised eyebrows. "Oh, Emma, you're so silly. Mommy's at work." She patted Jasmine lightly on the arm, urging her to take a cupcake anyway. The room relaxed, small murmurs swept among the guests, and conversation resumed. But Jasmine stood there, frozen, a million thoughts racing through her mind. She had grown used to being called Mama by Emma in private moments. It was a bond neither she nor the Reynoldses wanted to stifle, but this public slip was raw and undeniable. Michael cleared his throat, stepping between Jasmine and the other guests so she could pass by. "Why don't you refresh your drink, Jasmine?" He offered her a polite smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. She nodded, brushed Emma's hair back gently, and walked toward the buffet. Claire followed closely, murmuring something about helping her rearrange the dessert table. Jasmine understood without words. She was being banished from the spotlight. She stood alone by the buffet, watching the shimmer of silverware and the pastel hues of cupcakes. She realized the magnitude of what had just happened. Everyone saw that Emma called her mommy. Their whispers grew louder now that she wasn't near. In that moment, Jasmine felt like an outsider in a home that was supposed to be hers to share. She tucked her emotions away, grabbed a glass of unsweetened, iced tea and returned to Emma's side. By mid-afternoon, the party had moved outside. Children raced around the garden, water guns firing, bubbles floating through the air. Jasmine knelt to wipe away dirt from Emma's knees, humming a lullaby Emma loved. Claire approached with a tray of sandwiches, placing them gently on a wicker table. "Thank you, Jasmine," she said quietly. Jasmine nodded, but didn't look up. The weight of the earlier scene pressed down on her. Claire hesitated, looking worried before moving on to greet a new arrival. The sun dipped lower and the guests began to drift away, yawns and polite farewells filling the air. The last few friends gathered around the cake, singing "Happy Birthday" in a faltering chorus. Emma beamed, cake smears on her chin, and kissed Jasmine on the cheek before blowing out her candles. Some of the guests cheered, others clapped, but for Jasmine it felt like a private milestone. Emma's love declared in full view of strangers. Shortly after the guests left, twilight settled on the Reynolds' front porch. Claire and Michael stood together, embracing Emma as she yawned and rubbed her eyes. Jasmine knelt beside them, handing Emma a plush bunny from the party favors. Emma clutched the toy, her dark curls bouncing as she nodded gratefully. Claire studied Jasmine's face, seeing something she hadn't any other day: hurt. Jasmine's lips trembled as Emma's mother spoke. "Jasmine, we need to talk." The three of them moved inside to the living room, where empty plates and half-drunk glasses scattered the coffee table. Michael slid onto the couch, Claire took a seat beside him, and Jasmine perched on the armrest, hands folded in her lap. Emma's eyes drooped, but Jasmine whispered to her that everything was all right. Emma wandered off to her crib, where a nanny cam glowed faintly, another reminder of how closely the Reynoldses scrutinized affiliations. Once the door clicked shut behind Emma, Claire exhaled. "I'm sorry about what happened today." She reached out, placing a hand on Jasmine's. Jasmine nodded, shrugging slightly. "I know you're just doing your job, Claire, but it's hard. Hard to walk into a room and feel everyone's eyes on me because a 3-year-old said a word." Michael cleared his throat. "We should have been better prepared." He looked at Jasmine, guilt clouding his expression. "We've been so worried about you overstepping boundaries, but maybe we tried too hard to push you away when you didn't." "I'm sorry." Jasmine's voice was soft. "Emma loves me." She paused. "I love her." She looked down at her joined hands. "It's that simple and yet impossible all at once." Claire swallowed. "We hired you because you were perfect for Emma. We love how she looks at you. But when she called you mommy in front of our friends, I saw the looks, the questions in their eyes. Are you her real mother? Are they pretending? The curiosity, the judgment, it was there in the air." Michael nodded. "We can't pretend that it didn't happen. But maybe we need to talk to people. Maybe we need to set expectations." Jasmine felt a warmth in her chest as she heard them defend her. But a part of her braced against hope. Words were easy, acceptance was another matter. For the next few days, the household settled into an uneasy routine. Jasmine continued her duties, preparing breakfast, taking Emma to the park, reading bedtime stories. Yet she sensed a subtle shift. Claire and Michael kept their distance, tiptoeing around conversations that once would have been normal. Emma, oblivious to adult concerns, clung to Jasmine with a fiercer love, pressing when Jasmine read fairy tales in the early morning light and sleeping with her head on Jasmine's lap. Jasmine knew the day would come when Emma learned more about family, about biology, and she wondered if that day would bring further heartache. One afternoon, as Jasmine wheeled Emma's stroller around Willow Park, the bells on the playground jingled in the breeze. Children's laughter chimed like bells, and Jasmine greeted friends of Emma's parents, teachers from preschool, a few mothers from a playgroup. They offered polite smiles and sometimes even a nod to Jasmine. It was civil, but it carried the same polite distance of people who acknowledged her existence while simultaneously building a barrier. Jasmine forced herself to smile back, to greet them warmly. It was important for Emma's sake that she remained calm, that the world seemed safe and friendly. At home, Claire and Michael consulted with a child psychologist recommended by a friend. They worried about Emma's attachment to Jasmine. They asked, "How do we explain to her that Jasmine is not her mother? When is the right time? Should we start introducing the idea of biological parents?" The expert listened and answered gently. "Children form attachments to those who care for them. It's natural. But children can handle multiple loving figures. The mistake would be to treat Jasmine as a threat. Instead, embrace her relationship with Emma and gradually introduce that. She has two moms, one who gave birth and one who is raising her. The Reynoldses took notes, both relieved and anxious. That evening, the family sat around the dinner table, Michael discussing trial strategies, Claire drinking herbal tea, and Jasmine feeding Emma's mashed sweet potatoes. Emma babbled about the swings at the park, her eyes sparkling. Jasmine asked quietly, "Emma, do you know you have two mommies?" The question made Emma pause mid-spoonful. "Two mommies?" she asked, looking up. Jasmine smiled. "Yes, sweetheart. You have me, and you have Mommy Claire." Emma pondered for a moment, then nodded. "Are you both my mommies?" she asked seriously. Jasmine's eyes softened. "Yes, Emma." "Emily's new friend at preschool has two moms too." Emma looked at Claire, who nodded encouragingly. Emma took a bite, chewing thoughtfully. "That's okay," Emma said, shrugging. "Can I have more cake?" Everyone laughed. It was a small breakthrough, but Jasmine felt warmth spread through her. Perhaps acceptance was possible. Weeks passed and the topic faded into the background as life carried on. Jasmine and Emma's bond grew stronger, but Jasmine held herself back somewhat, worried about crossing unseen lines. Every time Emma reached for her in front of Michael's colleagues or Claire's friends, Jasmine smiled and gently redirected her to say Mommy Claire. But in private, she let Emma call her Mama and whispered loving affirmations as she tucked her into bed. One rainy afternoon, the doorbell rang. Claire sighed, pulling off her raincoat. She opened the door to reveal a stranger, a woman in her mid-30s wearing a coat that gleamed with raindrops. Her eyes were large, dark, and rimmed with tears. A flicker of recognition passed across Claire's face, but she masked it quickly with a polite smile. "May I help you?" she asked hesitantly. The woman stepped forward. "My name is Andrea Simmons. I believe Jasmine Turner is my daughter." Claire's breath caught. Michael appeared behind her, face ashen. Jasmine, who had been watering the ferns in the hallway, turned at the sound of her name. Her lips parted as she saw Andrea standing there, her eyes red but unwavering. In that moment, all the unspoken tension in the house stilled. Emma, playing with blocks on the living room floor, looked up curiously. Andrea's gaze shifted from Claire and Michael to Jasmine. Jasmine's posture stiffened, a glass watering can slipping from her grasp, water trickling down her arm. Andrea took a step forward. "Jasmine, I've looked for you for 12 years. I never stopped hoping I'd find you." Jasmine's eyes filled with confusion. Andrea turned to Claire and Michael, voice trembling. "I thought you might know where she was. I got your address from the foster agency. I had to see her with my own eyes." Claire swallowed, forcing composure. "Please come in, Ms. Simmons." "Jasmine, can you tell me what's happening?" Her voice quavered slightly. Jasmine shook her head. "No, Mom. Andrea is my mother?" Her voice cracked as the word escaped. Michael reached out, placing a steady hand on Jasmine's shoulder. "How is that possible?" Michael asked. "We have her employment records." Andrea held up a folder, pulling out official documents. A birth certificate with Jasmine's name. Adoption papers sealed by the state agency. The proof was irrefutable. Flashbacks flooded Jasmine's mind. Fragments of her earliest memories. A crowded hospital room. The soft hum of fluorescent lights. A woman gently swaddling a newborn before handing her to a nurse. She remembered a soft voice whispering, "I love you," before she faded into darkness. Years later, she had been found in foster care, placed with a kind family, and eventually adopted. She remembered hearing that her birth mother was young and unable to care for her. But she never knew her name, never knew why she would come back now. She looked at Andrea, tears welling. "You're my mother?" Andrea nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I couldn't keep looking forever. But I found you. I followed every lead. I never gave up." Jasmine wavered, stepping toward the entryway. Emma toddled over, tugging at Jasmine's pant leg. "Mama?" she asked, wide-eyed. Jasmine knelt, eyes locked with Emma's. "Yes, sweet girl." Mama's mom is here. Emma's brow furrowed. Mommy's mom? Emma whispered, turning her head toward Andrea. Andrea knelt, opening her arms. Emma, I'm Mommy's. Mommy, I'm your grandma. Emma hesitated for a breath, then rushed into Andrea's arms, burying her face in Andrea's coat. Andrea hugged her tightly, brushing raindrops from Emma's hair. Jasmine's heart clenched. This was her mother, her daughter's grandmother, yet the roles felt so delicate. Claire stood up, placing a gentle hand on Jasmine's shoulder. Would you like to talk in the living room? She asked, voice soft. Jasmine nodded, standing and wiping away tears. They moved toward the couch, Emma and Andrea trailing behind. The light shimmered against the rain-streaked windows. Andrea sat on the edge of the couch, Emma nestled in her lap, while Jasmine perched on the armrest. Claire and Michael stood behind the couch, watching with curiosity and empathy. Andrea began softly. Jasmine, I was 17 when I had you. I was scared and alone. I didn't know how to take care of you. I made a terrible choice to give you up. But I promised myself I would come back when I was ready. I went to college, made a life for myself, and started a family. But you were always in my heart. When I turned 30, I told my husband and my 2 young children about you. I hired a private investigator. I finally got your information last month and I had to see you. Jasmine listened, tears falling freely now. But why? She whispered. Why now? Andrea looked at her daughter with a mixture of sorrow and love. I'm sorry it took so long. I was ashamed. I thought you'd hate me. But I needed to see you. I needed to know you were okay. Now that I've found you, I don't want to lose you again. Jasmine closed her eyes. A storm of emotions churned inside her, anger, grief, confusion, and a new something she hadn't expected. Relief. She took a breath. I'm glad you came. But everything is so complicated. I have a job here, a life. Emma, I've built a family. Jasmine's gaze shifted to Claire and Michael. They exchanged glances, then offered supportive nods. Claire spoke gently. We still have care plans for Jasmine and Emma. We want to understand whatever you want to share and we'll support you. I promise you that. Andrea nodded, wiping her eyes. I don't want to take her away from you or from Emma. I just want a relationship with my daughter. If she wants me in her life, I'll be there. If not, I'll step away. Jasmine's heart fluttered at the word relationship. She thought of all the nights she spent comforting Emma, of the mornings she woke before dawn to make sure Emma had a warm breakfast, of the countless moments that forged the identity she had embraced for so long. Now there was this new piece of herself, this mother she barely knew. Emma looked up at Jasmine and then at Andrea. Grandma, she said quietly. Jasmine nodded, smiling through her tears. Yes, baby, that's Grandma. Emma leaned forward, pressing a kiss to Andrea's cheek, then looked back at Jasmine. She smiled as if understanding that love could expand to include more people. Andrea's arms wrapped around Emma again, and a soft, contented noise escaped. The little girl. Claire stood and fetched a wooden chair from the dining room, offering it to Andrea. She sat between Jasmine and Claire, glancing at Michael, who nodded encouragingly. The 4 of them began to talk, about experiences, about missed birthdays, about what might come next. Andrea asked about Emma's birth, how Claire had gone into labor after a weekend retreat, how Jasmine had been the one to phone her the moment Emma arrived. Claire explained, voice wavering, how Jasmine had shared news with warmth and respect, never imposing. Andrea closed her eyes, imagining her daughter caring for Claire's newborn as if she were her own. She reached out and held Jasmine's hand, squeezing it gently. I'm proud of the woman you've become, she whispered. Jasmine's breath caught in her throat. They spoke late into the night. Emma, now asleep in her crib, slept through the fateful reunion. The house, once bright with birthday decorations, was hushed, shadows flickering from the street lamp outside. Jasmine and Andrea explored stories from childhood. Andrea told of her time in college, how she had struggled with guilt and paid for adoption fees that had listed the Reynoldses as prospective parents. Jasmine shared tales of her upbringing, foster, homes, hopes of adoption, the moment she met Claire and Michael. They found connections in their shared love for cooking, a passion for gardening, and an appreciation for smooth jazz. Claire and Michael listened, their hearts swelling with empathy for both women. Andrea spoke of the nurse who handed over baby Jasmine 12 years ago, and how she had blurts of memories she carried to her grave. Jasmine asked about her older brother, someone she thought she had lost entirely. Andrea's lips trembled as she said nothing was certain, but she believed she might have siblings. The pieces fit together like puzzle fragments, hinting at a larger mosaic. Michael cleared his throat as he rose to fetch herbal tea for all of them. When he returned, he carried a tray with 4 steaming mugs. He handed one to Andrea and one to Jasmine, placing the cups on the coffee table. He offered one to Claire and took the last himself. They sipped quietly, the warmth radiating through the silence. Outside, rain had slowed to a drizzle. Sometimes water trickled against the window pane like gentle applause. Finally, Andrea said, "Tomorrow I have to return to my family, but I want to stay in touch. I want to meet Emma more, get to know her, and I want to be part of your lives if you'll have me." Jasmine's fingers traced the rim of her mug as she considered. Claire and Michael exchanged glances again, and Claire nodded. "We'd like that too. Your family." Jasmine took a deep breath, looking at her birth mother. "I would like that. When I was a little girl, I dreamed of a mother who'd love me. I never dared hope she'd be real. Now she is." They planned Julia's first visit to the Simmons household in Chicago, Andrea's home, which would include meeting Andrea's husband, Mark, and Jasmine's half-sisters, Lily and Carolyn. Jasmine felt a thrill at the idea of holding hands, with a sister, something she'd never had. She thought of Emma's growing family tree now stretching roots in new directions. That night, as she prepared Emma for bed, she whispered stories of tomorrow's adventure. Emma's eyes gleamed. "I get to meet Grandma?" "Yes, sweetheart. You get to meet Grandma." Emma yawned and nestled into Jasmine's arms. Jasmine kissed her forehead. "Tomorrow will be special." Emma nodded, already drifting. Jasmine switched off the lamp and covered Emma with her favorite blanket. As Emma slept, Jasmine sat beside her crib, reflecting on the whirlwind of the day. She had arrived at the Reynolds home as a nanny, and now she was rediscovering her identity as a daughter, while still being mama to Emma. Later, Jasmine stepped into the living room to find Claire and Michael already asleep on the couch, heads close together. Jasmine covered them with a throw blanket and settled into the armchair, exhausted but content. She closed her eyes for a moment and thought of Andrea's face when she wrapped her arms around Emma. She felt gratitude for the Reynolds' kindness, for Claire and Michael's willingness to share Jasmine's life rather than push her away. And she felt hope for what tomorrow might bring. Snowberry Street would be alive with meeting and merging, laughter and maybe tears. But most of all, love. The morning sun rose orange and pink above the city skyline, painting the clouds in pastel streaks. Jasmine woke early and tiptoed down the hallway to Emma's room. She watched her daughter sleep, chest rising and falling, tiny fists curled around her blanket. Jasmine smiled, kissed her forehead, and quietly dressed. She carried Emma downstairs where Claire and Michael already prepared breakfast. Michael handed Jasmine a mug. "Good morning," he said softly. "Big day ahead." Jasmine nodded, taking a sip. Claire handed her a fork and smiled. "We're going to celebrate today, all of us." It felt like a birthday of a different kind, one of identity and reunion, not cake and candles. Jasmine took a deep breath and laid Emma in her high chair. Emma blinked awake, yawning, and clapped her hands when she saw Jasmine. "Good morning, Mama," she said as if she had always known. Jasmine filled Emma's bowl with oatmeal topped with fresh berries. "Here you go, sweetheart." Emma reached impatiently, saying, "Eat, Mama." "Colder." Jasmine laughed, stirring in the milk to cool it. Soon everyone would be on their way to Chicago and the next chapter would unfold. Jasmine leaned over, kissed Emma's cheek and whispered, "Ready for our adventure?" Emma grinned. Ready? In the driveway, Claire loaded suitcases into the back of a black SUV. Michael strapped Emma into her car seat, gently placing Emma's favorite plush bunny beside her. Jasmine, wearing a simple denim jacket over a white blouse, took a deep breath as she stepped back. She closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of the journey that brought her here, a path of loss and longing, of love and dedication, of finding a family in a home that wasn't her own. Now, as an unspoken border dissolved between birth mother and daughter, she looked ahead to meeting a mother who had never stopped hoping, a grandmother who had traveled years to hold her. She felt bittersweet, gratitude for the Reynolds family, for the life she had built with them, and for the promise of new connections. Andrea pulled into the driveway a few minutes later, her car's engine cutting off with a soft hum. She stepped out, holding a bouquet of pink roses. Her eyes caught on Jasmine's figure by the trunk, and a slow smile spread across her face. Jasmine walked toward her. When Andrea's gaze lifted, she saw a woman grown into a strong, caring soul, her daughter, and Jasmine saw her mother. They hugged, a long embrace that bridged years spent apart. Emma, safely buckled in her car seat and clutching her bunny, watched the two women with wide, curious eyes. Claire and Michael stood to the side, hands over their hearts. A silent understanding passed between them. Families took many forms and unfolded in unexpected ways. As they piled into the SUV, Claire in the passenger seat, Michael in the back with Emma and Jasmine beside Andrea, they carried with them laughter, tears, and the unbreakable bonds of love that had somehow multiplied instead of divided. The engine roared, and they pulled away from the Reynolds home, heading toward a new chapter of shared stories, healing, and the joy of a family finally complete.